They forgot my name but remembered my bank account, so I left it all to the maid who held my hand. They thought I was just another confused old lady who wouldn't notice $127,000 disappearing from my bank account. They were wrong, and by the time I was done with them, my own daughter was in handcuffs, her boyfriend was testifying against her, and I had recovered every stolen penny plus interest. But let me back up and tell you how a 72-year-old retired nurse took down a family member who thought my gray hair made me stupid. My name is Dorothy Washington, and the morning I caught my daughter red-handed stealing my life savings, I didn't cry or scream. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the evidence scattered across my dining table, and smiled. Not because I was happy, because I finally understood why Brenda had been so desperate to help manage my finances. For 30 years, I'd worked as a registered nurse at Chicago General, saving every penny I could. My late husband Marcus had been an electrician, and together we'd built something solid. After he passed 5 years ago, I thought Brenda's sudden interest in my well-being was grief and love. I was partially right. She was grieving the time it was taking to get her hands on my money. The evidence was all there in black and white: unauthorized transfers, forged signatures, credit cards opened in my name. My dear daughter had been busy, assuming her old, confused mother would never notice. She'd even had the audacity to tell her friends I was developing dementia, laying the groundwork for her defense. But here's what Brenda forgot. I spent 3 decades managing medication schedules, reading doctors' handwriting, and catching errors that could kill people. My mind is sharp as a surgical scalpel, and I've just decided to use it. I picked up my phone and called my bank. Hello, this is Dorothy Washington. I need to report fraudulent activity on my accounts. The young man on the other end sounded concerned, professional. He had no idea he was about to help an old woman declare war. But before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps give me the strength to speak my truth. Now, let's get into my story. Brenda arrived at my house that evening with Chinese takeout and her usual performance of dutiful daughter care. She'd been doing this dance for months, showing up with food, asking about my confusion, subtly suggesting I was getting too old to handle my own affairs. "Mama, you look tired," she said, unpacking containers. "Maybe we should talk about that assisted living place again." I watched her move around my kitchen, this woman I'd raised, nursed through fevers, taught to ride a bicycle. She was 45 now, still beautiful, still my baby girl, and she was stealing from me with the same hands I'd once kissed better after scraped knees. "Brenda, sit down. We need to talk." Something in my tone made her pause. I'd used it countless times in the ER when a situation was about to go very bad, very fast. I placed the bank statements on the table between us. Her face went through a fascinating series of changes: confusion, recognition, calculation, then defiance. "Mama, you're confused. These statements are exactly what they appear to be. You've stolen $127,000 from me." The mask slipped completely. "I didn't steal anything. I'm your daughter. I'm protecting your assets. By transferring them to accounts I never authorized, by opening credit cards in my name, by forging my signature." I kept my voice steady, clinical. "Brenda, I know every medication interaction that could kill a patient. Do you really think I can't read a bank statement?" She leaned back, and I saw the exact moment she decided to attack rather than retreat. "You're losing it, Mama. Everyone can see it. I'm doing this for your own good." I smiled then, the same smile I'd given cocky residents who thought they knew better than the experienced nurse. "We'll see about that." The next morning, I began my investigation the way I'd learned to handle medical emergencies, methodically, thoroughly, and with absolute precision. First stop, my longtime attorney James Morrison, who'd handled Marcus's will and my estate planning. "Dorothy," he said, reviewing the documents I'd brought, "this is systematic fraud, but proving it and recovering the money, that's going to be complex. James, with all due respect, you've been family law and estate planning. I need someone who eats financial criminals for breakfast." He nodded slowly. "I have someone in mind, Victoria Chen. She specializes in elder financial abuse. She's intense." "Good. I'm feeling rather intense myself." That afternoon, I met Victoria Chen in her downtown office. She was younger than Brenda, probably mid-30s, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and a handshake that could crack walnuts. "Mrs. Washington, I've reviewed your preliminary documentation. This is one of the most brazen cases I've seen, and I've seen plenty." She leaned forward. "But I have to ask, are you prepared for what this means? Taking on family publicly, the emotional cost, the time investment." I thought of Brenda's face when she called me confused. The months of manipulation, the friends she'd probably told I was losing my mind. "Ms. Chen, I spent 30 years fighting to save lives. Now I'm fighting to save my dignity and my future. I've never been more prepared for anything." "Then let's destroy her case before she knows she needs one." For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Victoria moved fast. Within 48 hours, she'd connected me with Marcus Rivera, a private investigator who specialized in financial crimes. Marcus was probably 50, built like a former cop, with kind eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Washington," he said, settling into my living room with his laptop, "your daughter made some amateur mistakes. She left digital footprints everywhere. The question is, how far back does this go?" We spent the afternoon going through my records. Marcus photographed everything: bank statements, credit card bills, my medication list, even my nursing credentials and continuing education certificates. "Why the medical records?" I asked. "Because when this goes to court, they're going to claim diminished capacity. We're going to prove you could run a hospital if you wanted to." Victoria called that evening. "Dorothy, I've filed a temporary restraining order against Brenda accessing any more of your accounts. But she's hired counsel, Richard Blackwood. He's expensive and ruthless." "What does that mean?" "It means she's planning to fight dirty. They'll claim you're incompetent, that she was acting in your best interest, that you gave her permission and forgot. They'll try to make you look like a confused old woman who doesn't understand what she's signing." I laughed, startling her. "Ms. Chen, I've dealt with doctors who thought nurses were furniture and patients who thought yelling would get them better care. I'm not intimidated by one overpaid lawyer." "Good, because tomorrow we start fighting back, and it's going to get ugly before it gets better." That night, I sat in Marcus's old chair, looking at our wedding photo on the mantel. "Baby," I whispered, "our little girl's lost her way, but I'm going to bring her back to earth, even if I have to drag her there myself." Marcus Rivera earned his fee in the first week. He discovered Brenda had been planning this for over a year, starting small with borrowed grocery money and escalating to major transfers. She'd even researched my medical history, looking for any signs of cognitive decline she could exploit. "She applied for power of attorney twice," Marcus reported, showing me the paperwork. "Both times she forged your signature. But get this, she was sloppy. The notary stamps are from different states on the same day." We were sitting in Victoria's conference room, documents spread across the mahogany table like evidence in a murder case. In a way, it was the murder of trust, family bonds, and my financial security. "There's more," Marcus continued. She's been telling people you have dementia. I interviewed 3 of your neighbors. She specifically told Mrs. Patterson that you were getting confused about money and that she was trying to protect you from making mistakes. Victoria made notes on her legal pad. Classic groundwork for an incompetency defense. What about the boyfriend? Ah, yes, Kenneth Williams, 28 years old, unemployed, expensive taste. Your daughter's been funding quite a lifestyle. I closed my eyes. A 28-year-old boyfriend while she was married to Robert, who worked double shifts at the plant. How much? Conservative estimate? 40,000 in the last 6 months. Vacations, jewelry, a car down payment. She bought her boyfriend a car with my money. A BMW, Marcus added gently. I opened my eyes and looked at both of them. I want every penny back, and I want her to face consequences, not just financial, legal consequences. Victoria nodded. The district attorney's office has been very interested in elder fraud cases lately. With this level of documentation, we can definitely pursue criminal charges alongside the civil recovery. Do it. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning. I opened it to find Maria Santos, who'd been cleaning my house twice a week for the past 3 years. She looked distressed. Mrs. Washington, I need to tell you something. About Miss Brenda. I invited her in for coffee. Maria was 45, originally from Guatemala, and had become more friend than employee over the years. She was also, I realized, about to become a key witness. She asked me to lie, Maria said, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug. 2 months ago, she came here when you were at the grocery store. She asked me to tell people you were confused, forgetting things, leaving the stove on. Which I've never done? Never. Mrs. Washington, you're sharper than my teenagers. But she said if anyone asked, I should say you were having problems. She offered me extra money. I felt a surge of gratitude and anger. Gratitude that Maria was honest. Anger that Brenda had tried to corrupt even this relationship. Did you take the money? I told her I don't lie about people who treat me with respect. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She said you wouldn't remember our conversation anyway. I reached across the table and took her hand. Maria, would you be willing to testify about this? Yes, she was wrong to do this to you. You're good people. That afternoon, I called my sister Catherine in Atlanta. Kat was 2 years younger than me, retired from teaching, and had always been the fighter in the family. Dorothy, I've been waiting for you to figure this out, she said. Brenda called me last month, fishing for information about whether you were acting strange. I told her you seemed fine to me, and she got angry. She called you? She's been working the whole family, seeing who would support her story that you're declining. I've got 3 cousins who got similar calls. By evening, I had a list of family members Brenda had contacted, all part of her campaign to establish my supposed incompetency. What she hadn't counted on was that our family actually cared enough to compare notes. Victoria filed the civil suit on Monday morning. By Tuesday, the local news had picked up the story. Daughter accused of stealing $127,000 from elderly mother. Brenda's employer, a medical billing company, suspended her pending investigation. Wednesday brought the first cracks in her defense. Marcus had been monitoring her social media and discovered she'd posted photos from a Bahamas vacation 3 weeks earlier, paid for according to credit card records, with my money while I was home rationing my heart medication because I thought money was tight. She posted a photo of champagne that cost more than your monthly medication budget, Marcus reported. But Thursday brought the real breakthrough. Victoria had subpoenaed the notary who'd allegedly witnessed my signatures on the power of attorney documents. Linda Hayes had been notarizing documents for 15 years and kept meticulous records. I never notarized anything for Dorothy Washington, Linda testified in her deposition. I would remember because my own mother is Dorothy Washington. Different family, same name. I always remember when I notarize for other Dorothys. So these signatures are completely fraudulent. I never saw this woman in my life, and that's definitely not my notary stamp. Victoria looked like Christmas morning. Dorothy, we just moved from probable cause to slam dunk. With a forged notarization, this becomes multiple felonies. That evening, my phone rang. Brenda's voice was shaky, different. Mama, we need to talk. Through our lawyers. Please, Mama, I made mistakes, but I was trying to help. We can work this out as a family. Brenda, you forged my signature. You stole my money. You tried to convince people I was incompetent. The only family conversation we're having is the one where you explain this to a judge. I hung up and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The forensic accountant Victoria hired was thorough and merciless. Sarah Kim had been tracking financial fraud for 20 years, and Brenda's amateur hour theft was easy pickings. She made every mistake in the book, Sarah explained, showing me her analysis. Different handwriting samples, inconsistent signatures, electronic transfers from devices she owned during times you were verifiably elsewhere. We were in Victoria's office, preparing for depositions. The case was building into something bigger than simple theft. It was systematic elder abuse with multiple felony counts. The pattern shows clear intent to defraud, Sarah continued. Small amounts first, testing whether you'd notice, then escalating. She even researched your medical appointments to time larger transfers when you'd be distracted. Marcus had more intelligence. The boyfriend's cooperating now. Kenneth Williams doesn't want to go down with the ship. He's admitting Brenda told him the money was rightfully hers and that you were too old to manage it properly. He's going to testify? Oh, yes, especially after we showed him the recordings. Victoria smiled. Dorothy, remember when Brenda called you last week trying to work things out? Illinois is a one-party consent state for recording phone calls. You were well within your rights to record that conversation. I'd forgotten about that. After 30 years of documenting everything in medical charts, recording important conversations had become second nature. She admitted to taking the money. She called it borrowing and said she planned to pay it back. But she also said you were getting old and confused and that someone needed to manage your affairs. That's going to play beautifully in court, Victoria added. Nothing says criminal intent like recorded admissions followed by lies about your mental capacity. By the end of the week, we had enough evidence to fill a filing cabinet. Brenda's legal team was scrambling, their incompetency defense crumbling under the weight of documentation, proving I was sharp as ever. Brenda's deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in Victoria's office. I wasn't required to attend, but Victoria suggested I might want to observe through the conference room's video link. It's your choice, Dorothy, but seeing her try to explain this under oath might give you closure. I chose to watch. After months of betrayal and gaslighting, I wanted to see Brenda face the truth without her usual arsenal of manipulation. She looked smaller than I remembered, sitting across from Victoria with her expensive lawyer beside her. Richard Blackwood was exactly what I'd expected, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of man who thought intimidation was a legal strategy. Victoria was methodical, almost surgical in her questioning. Ms. Johnson, you transferred $15,000 from your mother's savings account on March 15th. Did you have her permission? I was managing her finances. She asked me to help. Did she specifically authorize this transfer? She said I should handle things. That's not what I asked. Did she specifically authorize this $15,000 transfer to your personal account? A long pause. Not specifically. For 2 hours, Victoria dismantled every lie, every excuse, every attempt at justification. Brenda's story changed 3 times. First, I'd given her blanket permission. Then, I was confused, and she was protecting me. Finally, she was borrowing money she planned to repay. The breaking point came when Victoria showed her the notarization documents. You signed your mother's name to these power of attorney papers. That's not. We have handwriting analysis, Ms. Johnson. We have testimony from the notary that she never met your mother. We have electronic evidence showing these documents were created on your home computer. Brenda looked at her lawyer, who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. I was trying to protect her. By committing fraud? She wasn't thinking clearly. Ms. Johnson, your mother worked as a registered nurse for 30 years. She managed complex medication protocols and life or death decisions. What made you think she couldn't manage her own finances? No answer. Was it because she was discovering your thefts? Still no answer. Watching through the video link, I felt something unexpected. Pity. This wasn't the strong, confident daughter I'd raised. This was a woman who'd let greed and poor judgment destroy everything that mattered. The district attorney's office moved faster than expected. 3 days after Brenda's disastrous deposition, Detective Sarah Chen, no relation to Victoria, knocked on my door with a warrant for Brenda's arrest. Mrs. Washington, we're charging your daughter with multiple felonies: elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Based on the evidence your legal team provided, this is one of the strongest cases we've seen. I invited Detective Chen in for coffee. She was probably 40, professional but kind, with the demeanor of someone who'd seen too much family destruction. I have to ask, she said, are you prepared for what comes next? This will be public. Your daughter could face significant prison time. I thought about that 28-year-old boyfriend driving a BMW bought with my money. About Brenda telling neighbors I had dementia. About months of gaslighting and manipulation. Detective Chen, my daughter made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. The media attention might be intense. Then maybe other families will see what elder abuse looks like and recognize it sooner than I did. Brenda was arrested at her office that afternoon. The local news ran the story that evening. Local woman charged with stealing over $100,000 from elderly mother. The reporter interviewed me briefly, and I kept it simple. I trusted my daughter to help me, and she betrayed that trust. But I want other seniors to know, you don't have to accept abuse just because it comes from family. The phone calls started immediately. Other families with similar stories, attorneys with similar cases, senior advocacy groups wanting to share my story. Marcus called that evening. Dorothy, you've started something. Channel 7 wants to do a longer interview about elder financial abuse. Good. Maybe we can save someone else from going through this. The interview aired on Friday evening. I wore my best blue dress, the one Marcus had always said brought out my eyes, and sat in my living room talking to reporter Janet Morrison about betrayal, recovery, and fighting back. Mrs. Washington, what do you want other seniors to know? That age doesn't mean weakness, that family titles don't excuse criminal behavior, and that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. The segment included interviews with Victoria and Detective Chen about warning signs of elder abuse. By Saturday morning, my phone was ringing constantly. Mrs. Washington, this is Eleanor Rodriguez from the Senior Legal Aid Society. We've had 47 calls since your interview aired, families dealing with similar situations. What can we do? Would you consider speaking at our monthly meeting? Your story is exactly what people need to hear. I agreed immediately. That afternoon brought more calls. A producer from a national talk show, a reporter from AARP magazine, 3 different senior advocacy groups wanting to schedule presentations. Maria stopped by with groceries and found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by notes and phone messages. Mrs. Washington, you're famous. I'm useful, I corrected. There's a difference. But the most meaningful call came Sunday evening. A woman named Patricia Williams, 83 years old, called from Springfield. Mrs. Washington, I saw you on TV. My son, he's been taking money from my account. I thought I was going crazy. We talked for an hour. By the end of the call, Patricia had the phone number for a local attorney who specialized in elder abuse and a plan to document the theft. You gave me hope, she said before hanging up. That night, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about getting my money back anymore. It was about proving that seniors could fight back and win. Brenda's legal team requested a meeting in early November. Richard Blackwood looked tired, like a man who'd realized his client had led him into an unwinnable fight. Mrs. Washington, he began, my client would like to avoid the publicity and expense of a trial. We're prepared to offer full restitution plus interest. Victoria and I had discussed this possibility. The money was important, but it wasn't everything. What about the criminal charges? I asked. That's between your daughter and the district attorney. Not good enough. Blackwood looked surprised. Mrs. Washington, this is a generous offer. Full financial recovery. Mr. Blackwood, your client didn't just steal my money. She tried to steal my dignity, my independence, and my reputation. She told people I was mentally incompetent. She forged my signature. She manipulated family members. Victoria leaned forward. Our client wants accountability, not just restitution. What do you mean? Public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, community service specifically related to elder abuse prevention, and cooperation with our ongoing media campaign about financial elder abuse. Blackwood whispered with Brenda, who'd been silent throughout the meeting. She looked older, worn down by months of legal pressure and public attention. She'll consider it, he said finally. She has 48 hours, Victoria replied. After that, we're taking this to trial, and I promise you don't want me in front of a jury with this evidence. As we left the meeting, I felt something approaching satisfaction. Not victory yet, but the first taste of justice. When Brenda rejected the settlement terms, Victoria shifted into full trial mode. Our case was rock solid, but she wanted it to be overwhelming. Dorothy, trials are theater as much as law. We need to show the jury not just what happened, but who you are. A competent, intelligent woman who was systematically victimized by someone she trusted. We spent hours preparing my testimony. Victoria taught me to speak slowly, make eye contact with the jury, and stay calm under cross-examination. Blackwood will try to rattle you. He'll suggest you're confused, that you gave permission, that this is a family misunderstanding blown out of proportion. How do I handle that? With facts. Every time he makes a claim, you respond with specific evidence, dates, amounts, documentation. Marcus provided trial exhibits, blown-up copies of forged documents, bank records, photos from Brenda's social media showing her spending my money on vacations and gifts. The evidence filled 3 boxes. Sarah Kim, our forensic accountant, created a timeline showing exactly when each theft occurred and what Brenda was doing with the money. The pattern was damning. Steal from mother, spend on boyfriend, repeat. But the most powerful evidence came from an unexpected source. Kenneth Williams, Brenda's young boyfriend, had kept text messages where she explicitly discussed taking my money. She literally texted him, "Got another $5K from Mom's account. Let's go to Vegas," Marcus reported. The man kept screenshots of everything. Why would he do that? Insurance. He suspected she might throw him under the bus eventually, so he documented everything. Victoria smiled grimly. Dorothy, your daughter picked the wrong boyfriend to trust with her criminal conspiracy. 3 weeks before trial, we got our final piece of evidence. Security camera footage from my bank showing Brenda using a forged ID to access my safe deposit box. She took your jewelry too, Marcus said gently. Marcus's wedding ring, my mother's pearls, the diamond earrings Marcus gave me for our 25th anniversary. For the first time in months, I cried. The courthouse was packed on Monday morning. Local media, senior advocacy groups, and curious citizens filled every seat. Judge Patricia Williams, no relation to Kenneth, was known for being fair but tough on elder abuse cases. Victoria's opening statement was surgical. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about betrayal of the worst kind. The defendant systematically stole from her own mother, forged documents, lied to family members, and tried to convince the world that her victim was mentally incompetent. She walked the jury through the evidence methodically: the forged signatures, the unauthorized transfers, the lies about my mental state, the expensive lifestyle funded by my savings. Mrs. Dorothy Washington is 72 years old. She worked as a registered nurse for 30 years, saved every penny she could, and trusted her daughter to help manage her affairs. That trust was not just broken, it was weaponized against her. Blackwood's opening was predictable. Family dynamics are complicated. I was showing signs of confusion. Brenda was trying to protect my assets. This was a misunderstanding, not a crime. Mrs. Washington is elderly and proud. Rather than admit she needed help, she's chosen to criminalize her daughter's attempts to care for her. I watched the jury during his statement. Most looked skeptical. One older woman shook her head slightly when he suggested I was confused. Victoria called witnesses in order of impact. First, Linda Hayes, the notary, who testified she'd never met me and never notarized the power of attorney documents. The signatures are completely fraudulent, she said firmly. This is identity theft, plain and simple. Detective Chen explained the investigation, walking through each piece of evidence with professional precision. By lunch on day one, Brenda's case was already falling apart, but the afternoon brought the devastating testimony. Kenneth Williams took the stand. Kenneth Williams looked like exactly what he was, a young man who'd gotten in over his head with an older woman's criminal schemes. Victoria had immunity agreements protecting him from prosecution in exchange for complete truthfulness. Mr. Williams, how did you meet the defendant? At a bar in River North. She said she was recently divorced, had money, liked to have fun. Did she tell you where the money came from? At first, she said it was from her divorce settlement. Later, she said her mother was old and couldn't manage money anymore. So she was helping. Victoria showed him printed text messages, blown up on courtroom screens for the jury to see. Did Ms. Johnson send you this text on March 18th? Got another $5K from Mom's account? Let's go to Vegas? Yes. And this one on April 2nd. Old lady will never miss it. She can't even remember what she had for breakfast. Kenneth's voice was barely audible. Yes. Mr. Williams, did the defendant ever express concern about her mother's well-being? Number. She mostly complained about having to wait for her mother to die to inherit everything. The courtroom was dead silent. I watched Brenda's face crumble as her own words were read back through her boyfriend's testimony. Victoria presented 23 text messages, each one more damning than the last. Brenda hadn't just stolen my money. She'd celebrated it, planned it, and mocked my supposed mental decline to her lover. During cross-examination, Blackwood tried to paint Kenneth as an unreliable witness with his own motivations to lie. but the text messages were time-stamped, corroborated by bank records, and devastating in their casual cruelty. She told me her mother wouldn't live much longer anyway, Kenneth testified. She said the money was practically hers already. When he stepped down, I saw two jury members wipe their eyes. The prosecution was building more than a case. It was building outrage. Taking the witness stand was like stepping into the eye of a storm. The courtroom was packed, cameras rolling for the evening news, every eye focused on me. Victoria led me through my background, 30 years as an RN, my marriage to Marcus, our careful financial planning, his death, and my initial gratitude for Brenda's help. Mrs. Washington, when did you first realize money was missing? When I tried to pay for my heart medication and my card was declined, I thought it was a bank error. What did you do? I called the bank and requested statements for all my accounts. That's when I saw the unauthorized transfers. Victoria walked me through each piece of evidence, my clear handwriting versus the forged signatures, my detailed medication schedule proving mental competence, my nursing credentials, and continuing education. Mrs. Washington, did you ever give your daughter permission to take $127,000 from your accounts? Absolutely not. I trusted her to help me organize my paperwork, not steal from me. Did you ever tell her you were having memory problems or confusion? Never, because I wasn't having any problems. The cross-examination was brutal but predictable. Blackwood tried every angle. Wasn't I getting forgetful? Didn't I sometimes need help with tasks? Wasn't it possible I'd given permission and forgotten? I answered each question with specific facts and dates. When he suggested I might be confused about my own mental state, I looked directly at the jury. Sir, I spent 30 years managing life or death medication protocols for critically ill patients. If I could keep track of dozens of patients' complex medical needs, I think I can manage my own bank account. When he implied that family financial arrangements are complicated and often informal, I stopped him cold. Mr. Blackwood, there's nothing complicated about forging someone's signature. There's nothing informal about stealing $127,000. And there's nothing family-like about telling people your mother has dementia when she doesn't. By the time I stepped down, I knew we'd won. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the forewoman, an older African-American woman who reminded me of my sister Catherine, looked directly at me before reading the verdict. On the charge of elder abuse, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of financial fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of forgery, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of identity theft, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. Brenda collapsed into her chair, finally understanding that her actions had consequences. Blackwood put his arm around her shoulders, but the damage was done. Judge Williams scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later, but addressed Brenda directly. Ms. Johnson, you have been convicted of systematically defrauding your own mother, a woman who trusted you with her financial well-being. This represents a profound betrayal of family bonds and a serious crime against a vulnerable member of our community. Outside the courthouse, Victoria hugged me tightly. Dorothy, we didn't just win. We sent a message. Elder abuse has consequences. The media attention was intense but positive. Channel 7's evening report called it a victory for seniors everywhere and featured interviews with advocacy groups praising the verdict. But the most meaningful response came from Patricia Williams, the elderly woman I'd spoken with months earlier. Mrs. Washington, I watched the trial coverage. My son pleaded guilty and made restitution. Your case gave me the courage to fight back. That evening, sitting in Marcus's old chair, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Pride in myself, in my strength, in my refusal to accept mistreatment just because it came from family. The phone rang constantly. Reporters, advocacy groups, other seniors with similar stories. I answered every call. 3 weeks later, we returned to Judge Williams's courtroom for sentencing. Brenda had aged years in the months since her arrest. The confident woman who'd manipulated me for so long was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood the magnitude of her betrayal. Her lawyer presented character witnesses, friends who testified about her good qualities, former co-workers who described her as helpful and reliable, but the evidence spoke louder than character references. Your Honor, Victoria addressed the court, the defendant didn't steal from a stranger or even an acquaintance. She systematically defrauded her own mother, forged documents, attempted to have her declared incompetent, and showed no remorse until she was caught. Judge Williams reviewed the victim impact statement I'd written, describing not just the financial loss, but the emotional devastation of family betrayal. Brenda Johnson, the judge said, you are sentenced to 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years probation. You will make full restitution of $127,000 plus interest and court costs. You will also complete 500 hours of community service specifically related to elder abuse prevention. 4 years. It seemed both too much and too little for the destruction she'd caused. But the restitution order was comprehensive, not just the stolen money, but legal fees, investigation costs, and the replacement value of my jewelry she'd pawned. The total came to nearly $180,000. Furthermore, Judge Williams continued, you are permanently prohibited from having any access to your mother's financial accounts or serving as anyone's power of attorney. As they led Brenda away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. I saw my little girl's face for just a moment, scared, sorry, finally understanding what she'd lost. I didn't feel victory. I felt relief and the beginning of something that might eventually become forgiveness. The sentencing made national news. CNN ran a segment about elder financial abuse, using my case as an example of successful prosecution. AARP magazine featured my story in their next issue under the headline, Fighting Back at 72. But it was the personal messages that moved me most. Letters from seniors who'd recognized similar patterns in their own families. Phone calls from adult children who'd witnessed siblings financially abusing their parents. Email after email from people saying my story had given them courage to speak up. One letter particularly touched me, from a woman named Grace Chen in Portland. Mrs. Washington, I'm 68 years old and my nephew has been helping with my finances for 2 years. After watching your trial coverage, I checked my bank statements. He's taken over $40,000. I'm meeting with an attorney tomorrow. Thank you for showing me I don't have to accept this. Victoria connected me with senior advocacy groups across the country. The National Center on Elder Abuse asked me to keynote their annual conference. 3 different law schools invited me to speak about recognizing and prosecuting elder financial abuse. Dorothy, Victoria said during one of our planning meetings, you've become the face of elder empowerment. People see you and realize they don't have to be victims. The requests kept coming. A documentary filmmaker wanted to follow my story. Publishers inquired about book rights. A television producer pitched a movie based on my case. But the most important invitation came from Detective Sarah Chen. Mrs. Washington, would you consider consulting with our department? We're creating an elder abuse task force, and we need someone who understands both the legal process and the emotional impact. I accepted immediately. At 72, I'd found a new purpose, helping other seniors fight back against financial abuse and family betrayal. 6 months after the trial, my life had transformed completely. The money was fully recovered. Brenda's house had been sold, her 401k liquidated, even the BMW repossessed and sold. My financial security was restored, but more importantly, My sense of self was stronger than ever. I'd hired Maria Santos as my full-time assistant, helping coordinate my speaking engagements and advocacy work. She'd moved into my guest room and become the daughter I'd needed all along, loyal, honest, genuinely caring about my well-being. Mrs. Washington, she said one morning over coffee, Channel 5 wants to do a follow-up story about your advocacy work. Schedule it. But first, we need to return Mrs. Patterson's call about her grandson's borrowing problem. My dining room had become an informal command center for elder abuse cases. 3 filing cabinets held documentation for families I was helping. A whiteboard tracked ongoing cases and legal proceedings. Victoria had become more than my attorney. She was my partner in what we'd started calling the Gray Justice Project. We'd helped 12 families recover stolen funds and file criminal charges against family members who'd committed financial abuse. Dorothy, the district attorney's office says elder abuse prosecutions are up 300% since your case, Victoria reported during our weekly meeting. Families are more willing to file charges, and prosecutors are taking these cases more seriously. The phone rang constantly. Seniors sharing their stories. Adult children reporting siblings who were stealing. Bank employees who'd witnessed suspicious activity and wanted to know how to help. But the most satisfying calls came from success stories. Families who'd recovered stolen money, prosecuted financial abusers, and rebuilt their security and dignity. Mrs. Washington, this is Robert Martinez from Phoenix. Remember, you helped my mother with her case against my brother? He just pleaded guilty and agreed to full restitution. Mom wanted me to call and thank you. Each success felt like a small victory against the forces that prey on vulnerable seniors. A year after Brenda's sentencing, I was invited to testify before a congressional subcommittee on aging about elder financial abuse. Sitting in that hearing room in Washington, D.C., addressing senators and representatives, I thought about how far I'd come from that morning when I first discovered the theft. Honorable members, I began, elder abuse thrives in silence and shame. Victims often don't report because the perpetrators are family members. But when we fight back publicly, we give other seniors permission to protect themselves. The statistics I presented were staggering. Elder financial abuse cost seniors $36 billion annually, with only 1 in 44 cases ever reported to authorities. Most victims are women over 70, and most perpetrators are adult children or caregivers. The solution isn't just law enforcement, I continued. It's education, empowerment, and changing the narrative that seniors are helpless victims who should accept mistreatment from family. Senator Patricia Williams, no relation to Judge Williams or the other Patricia Williams I'd helped, asked pointed questions about prevention and prosecution. Mrs. Washington, what would you say to seniors who suspect they're being financially abused but are afraid to act? I'd tell them what I learned. Age doesn't make you weak. Family titles don't excuse criminal behavior. And it's never too late to fight for your dignity and security. You deserve better, and help is available. The hearing resulted in new federal funding for elder abuse prosecution and prevention programs. But more importantly, it was broadcast live and watched by millions of seniors who needed to hear that message. That evening, my hotel phone rang dozens of times. Seniors who'd watched the hearing and wanted to share their stories or ask for help. Mrs. Washington, I'm 74 years old and my daughter-in-law has been forging my checks. I thought I was going crazy until I saw you on TV. Mrs. Washington, my son moved in to help me, but he's been stealing my Social Security checks. How do I get him out of my house? Mrs. Washington, you made me realize I don't have to accept being treated like I'm stupid just because I'm old. Each call reminded me why this work mattered. 2 years post-trial, I'd settled into a routine that combined advocacy with healing. Twice a week, I consulted with the police department's elder abuse task force. Once a month, I spoke at senior centers about recognizing and preventing financial abuse. And every Thursday, I visited the prison where Brenda was serving her sentence. Those visits were the hardest part of my new life, but also the most necessary. We sat across from each other in the visitor's room, searching for the relationship we'd lost somewhere between her greed and my betrayal. Mama, she said during one visit, I know sorry isn't enough, but I need you to know I never meant for it to go this far. What did you think would happen, Brenda? That I'd never notice? That I'd just accept being stolen from? I thought, I thought I'd pay it back before you found out. I thought Kenneth and I would get married and everything would work out. I looked at my daughter, still my daughter, despite everything, and saw someone who'd made catastrophic choices based on short-term thinking and selfish desires. The money was never the worst part, I told her. It was the lying, the gaslighting, trying to convince people I was mentally incompetent. That broke something between us that might never heal. She cried then, real tears of genuine remorse I hadn't seen since her arrest. Is there any chance, when I get out, could we try to rebuild something? I don't know, baby, but I hope so. Those visits reminded me that justice and healing aren't the same thing. The legal system had given me justice, full restitution, criminal conviction, public vindication, but healing was slower, more complex, and couldn't be mandated by a judge. Meanwhile, my advocacy work continued expanding. The documentary about my case premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and later aired on HBO. The book I'd finally agreed to write, They Forgot My Name But Remembered My Bank Account, became a bestseller in the senior empowerment category. By the third anniversary of my case, the Gray Justice Project had evolved into something larger than I'd ever imagined. We'd helped 127 families recover nearly $3.2 million in stolen assets and achieve 89 criminal convictions for elder financial abuse. Victoria had hired 2 additional attorneys specializing in elder law. Marcus Rivera had started a private investigation firm focused exclusively on financial crimes against seniors. Maria Santos had completed her paralegal certification and become my official case coordinator. Mrs. Washington, Maria said one morning, reviewing our calendar, we have 3 new cases this week, 2 speaking engagements, and a consultation with that Netflix producer about the series. The Netflix series was still in development, a dramatized version of my story designed to raise awareness about elder abuse. I'd insisted on creative control to ensure accuracy and dignity in the portrayal. But the real impact was happening in courtrooms, police stations, and families across the country. Elder abuse prosecutions had increased dramatically nationwide. Banks had implemented new protocols for detecting suspicious account activity involving senior customers. Adult Protective Services agencies reported more referrals and better outcomes. You've started a movement, Detective Chen told me during one of our monthly task force meetings. Seniors aren't accepting abuse silently anymore. They're fighting back, and they're winning. The most rewarding development was the peer counseling program we'd established. Seniors who'd successfully fought financial abuse were now helping others navigate the legal system and emotional trauma. Eleanor Rodriguez, the 83-year-old woman I'd helped early on, had become one of our most effective advocates. Dorothy taught me that being old doesn't mean being powerless, she told a group of seniors at a community center in Miami. My son thought he could steal from me because I was just a confused old lady. Now he's in prison, I have my money back, and I'm helping other families fight back. Success stories like Eleanor's were multiplying across the country. 4 years after Brenda's conviction, I was invited to the White House for the signing of the Elder Justice Reauthorization Act. legislation that increased federal funding for elder abuse prevention and prosecution. Standing in the Rose Garden with other advocates, I thought about how far we'd all come. President Harris mentioned my case specifically during her remarks. Dorothy Washington showed us that seniors don't have to accept abuse silently. Her courage to fight back publicly has inspired thousands of families to seek justice and protection. After the ceremony, I was interviewed by major news networks about the legislation and the broader elder empowerment movement. Mrs. Washington, asked the CNN reporter, what do you want people to remember about your story? That dignity doesn't have an expiration date, that family love should never include financial abuse, and that it's never too late to stand up for yourself and demand better treatment. The statistics told the story of our impact. Elder abuse reporting was up 400% since my case gained national attention. Recovery rates for stolen assets had improved dramatically. Criminal prosecution rates had tripled. But beyond the numbers, something cultural had shifted. Seniors were no longer accepting mistreatment as inevitable. Families were having difficult conversations about financial boundaries. Society was recognizing elder abuse as the serious crime it had always been. My phone still rang daily with new cases, speaking requests, and media interviews. At 76, I was busier than I'd been during my nursing career, but this work felt like the culmination of everything I'd learned about caring for vulnerable people. Maria, now 48, and officially my adopted daughter, had become indispensable to the operation. She managed schedules, coordinated with attorneys, and provided the emotional support that made my advocacy work sustainable. Mrs. Washington, she said one evening as we reviewed case files, you know you've changed how the whole country thinks about seniors, right? We've changed it, Maria. This was never a one-person movement. Maybe not, but you started it. You showed everyone that being 72 doesn't mean being helpless. Today, as I write this final chapter, Brenda is scheduled for release next month after serving her full sentence. We've continued our weekly prison visits, slowly rebuilding something that might eventually resemble a mother-daughter relationship. I've been thinking about what I want to do when I get out, she told me during our last visit. I want to help somehow, maybe work with families dealing with financial abuse, try to make amends for what I did. That's a long road, baby, but it's the right direction. The Gray Justice Project now operates in 37 states with a staff of 43 attorneys, investigators, and advocates. We've recovered over $47 million in stolen assets and achieved criminal convictions in 78% of our cases. But the real victory isn't in the numbers. It's in the cultural shift we've helped create. Seniors no longer accept that being old means being vulnerable to family predators. Adult children think twice before borrowing from elderly parents. Society recognizes elder abuse as the serious crime it's always been. My house, once the target of systematic theft, has become a symbol of resistance and recovery. Tourists sometimes drive by, having read about the case or watched the Netflix series. I don't mind. If it reminds one more family to protect their elderly relatives, it's worth the attention. Maria and I still work from my dining room, surrounded by case files and success stories. At 80, yes, 8 years have passed since that first discovery, I'm not slowing down. There are too many seniors who need to hear that they deserve better, that help is available, that age doesn't equal helplessness. To everyone hearing this story, if you're being financially abused by family or caregivers, know that you have options. You deserve dignity, respect, and security regardless of your age. It's never too late to fight back, and you don't have to fight alone. Don't let anyone convince you that family love includes theft, manipulation, or lies about your mental capacity. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Seek help from attorneys who specialize in elder law. adult protective services, or law enforcement. And remember what I learned at 72. They might forget your name, but that doesn't mean they get to steal your life savings. You have power, you have rights, and you have advocates ready to help you use both. Fight back, win, help others do the same. Your dignity isn't negotiable, and your voice matters at any age.